Hola and welcome to our 33rd episode of the Roofless Dog and Pony Show. I am Julio Panisello, the dream alchemist at Roofless Painters, and I'm going to be the host of this presentation. 33 episodes already, 33 weeks. That's pretty amazing. So as an introduction, we want to just say, in case you haven't seen you haven't seen any of the episodes, that the Roofless Dog and Pony Show is a weekly, live, sometimes prepared, sometimes unprepared presentation featuring the conceptual and the stylistic inspiration behind our weekly painting webinars. So what we do is introduce the theme of the next painting collection. We talk about the inspiration behind it. We bring up a little bit of art history references. We also bring some slides featuring paintings that we hope inspire us to see different styles in which painters have tackled the theme or the subject differently. And so instead of like using up time during our painting webinar to talk about all these things, what we do is to present them now so we can just get ready, and when the painting webinar starts, then we're ready to paint. You can find all these episodes in our YouTube channel. We encourage you to go. There's a link in our bio that takes you there. You can comment and like and hopefully subscribe to our channel. You can also find the videos here on Instagram. And the same thing, you can ask us questions and make any comments. And I think that is the introduction. I'm just going to go ahead and present the painting webinar. This was a very thoughtful decision, I guess. We're going to title this webinar American Skin. And we said that after 2 weeks of portraiture, I think it's been 2 weeks. I'm not sure. Maybe just at least 1 week. We were just going to switch from portraiture to landscape, still life, or doing something different. But we just couldn't help being pulled by traditional portraiture again, because we are revisiting and reviewing some of the news that happened in February, in January, and also in the past December. And we realized that we were all caught up with this political drama unfolding and terrible social situation, that we did not really pay attention to a lot of things that happened in the past 3 months. So I'm just gonna start sharing, and I did download the slides this time. So we came across an article, and finally, I would say we're extremely happy that we are somewhat able to reconnect with the art world and find out what's going on there and get inspired by some of the news that happen in the art world. We've been so disconnected and so caught up. So we found this article mentioning this painting by Barclay L. Hendricks, who is a painter that we are familiar with. We discovered him a few short years ago while we were diving in one of those rabbit holes that we usually find ourselves in, trying to discover painters that are not mainstream, or painters that have a body of work that hasn't been acknowledged by the big historical events, I would say. So yeah, we were familiar with his work, and so we just came across this article just mentioning that in December there was a sale by Sotheby's one of the lots about contemporary and modern art. And this painting by him sold for $4 million, which is the highest price that has ever been paid for one of his works. And just about this. Anyhow, so we just thought it would be interesting to talk about his work, talk about his life, and then propose an assignment that's based on his body of work. So he was born in 1945. He's an American painter. He lived in Philadelphia, and he went to school at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts. And then when he was only 21 years old, through the school, he went to Europe on a formative trip. So while in Europe, he visited the museums, and he discovered the old masters, or he not discovered, but he actually witnessed or saw the old masters in the early modern paintings in the museums, and he got really inspired. It made a strong impression on him, and he especially fell in love with the portraits of Van Dyck and Diego Velázquez. And he also thought, or he felt, that his own race was completely absent from Western art, and that void troubled him. And during the 60s, as the Black Power movement gained momentum, he set about to change what he saw in Europe by correcting the imbalance. So he started painting portraits of his friends, large portraits, some of them life-size, his family, strangers that he would encounter on the street. And those portraits are significant because they're done in the tradition of the Renaissance and Baroque painting, but with contemporary subjects communicating the same assertiveness and the same pride, but this time among his own community. So I'll explain why this is important and remarkable and interesting. But what the webinar will be about, because this reminds us a little bit of the webinar we did about copyists, where we got inspired to copy traditional paintings because there was a time when either there were not many art schools, or some groups of people, like women, were not allowed to go to art school, or people with lower socioeconomical levels or classes were not affluent enough to go to art school. And some people with artistic tendencies but without the resources or the proper gender at the time, they learned to paint by going to museums and copying pieces. So we found that there's this amazing journey, or we want to pay homage to the journey of Bartley Hendrick, getting inspired by these Baroque and Renaissance paintings, creating traditional portraits with contemporary subjects. And what we want to do is crop the faces of the paintings, of the portraits that he did, and become copyists of his work. So in essence, what we will provide is a collection or a portfolio of cropped images of the faces of in the portraits of Bartley Hendricks, and we'll just use that as the inspiration for our portraits. And this is one example, one of the images that we will provide. And I want to talk a little bit about why his portraits are different, why they were not popular, and also the reason why now, in a matter of like 10 years, the portraits went from $40,000 to $4 million. So there's a huge interest in his work. He's also been very influential with contemporary painters that we know a little bit more of. But yeah, anyhow, so he was influenced by three things: the classic works in European museums. He was also um, fascinated, or he not fascinated. He was part of the musical scene. He encountered Nina Simone and Miles Davis, and he became part of the audience. And he also wanted to bring that essence of life, or the scene, the musical scene that he experienced at the time. And the third influence, it's his own community, the people that he lived with, the people that he loved, the people that he engaged with. And he combined all these things. And some people created a term for his body of work. They called it cool realism. And I'm not sure we want to partake with that definition, cool realism. But anyhow, so this was one of the descriptions. So the portraits illustrate, I'm going to give you another example. This portrait, by the way, the first portrait was titled Mr. Johnson, Sammy from Miami, 1972, and was painted in 1972. This portrait right here, it's titled Toast of Amos, 1966, and the word toast related to the color of the skin. This was one of the earlier portraits of his series of figures. And going back to his paintings, and the fact that they illustrate the artist's talent for exploring race when black bodies were not subjects on paintings. He brought in a little bit of 1950s abstraction in the sense of bringing completely flat backgrounds, very minimalistic. When he went to school, some of his teachers were abstract painters and also minimalists as well. So I feel like he was influenced by not only the European tradition of portraiture, but also the modern trends at the time, 50s, 60s. So there's a very peculiar way of placing the figure in the format and completely ignoring or contextualizing the space in the figure. So that's one of the things that stands out as different at the time. He influenced a lot of contemporary painters that we know. Kehinde Wiley had the same experience, and coincidentally, Bartley Hendricks became a graduate of Yale, and so did Kehinde Wiley. Mikaeleen Thomas, he does portraits of female figures in indoor spaces that have a lot of collaged elements and sequences, and they're very colorful. And then, of course, Amy Sherald, both Kehinde Wiley and Amy Sherald became the painters of the official portraits of Barack and Michelle Obama. So they are a little bit more well known. Well, guess what? They were influenced by Bartley Hendricks big time. You can put images of Amy Sherald's paintings right next to Bartley Hendricks, and they pretty much look very similar in composition. So his contemporaries, the painters that he worked with, or the painters that were alive at the time, they were abandoning realism. They were just living figuration in favor of exploring the dynamics of pop art and minimalism. So what he did was not on trend. He went against the trend. He struck out in a direction all on his own, turning his gaze on the black people he grew up with, lived with, met on the street, and with whom he had relationships. I'm just gonna bring you let me see if I can find another one. This is another cropped up view of a larger painting, but you can see here how he treated the skin in a very traditional kind of like way. And I'm so yeah, he even said regarding the screen that the skin color that he knew. Yeah, let me see. I had the knowledge of how light works on the epidermis. This is a quote that it's in a book titled, in a catalog titled American Skin Artists on Black Figuration. And we're taking the part of this title as the title of our webinar, American Skin. Yeah, so he brought techniques like chiaroscuro, for example, which he got inspired by Caravaggio, and again the use of light by Diego Velázquez as well, and how he Diego Velázquez palette, his favorite colors were the two blacks, Payne's Gray and Van Dyke Brown. Bartley Hendricks also used those colors to paint skin in addition to others, but there's something about the painting process that we feel really connected with in that sense. And because of the portraits we did of Kamala Harris, we learned that even though conceptually there is a disconnect between us painters painting figures that belong to a different social group, from the painter's point of view, unless we incorporate subjects that have different skin tones, we will end up always painting the same skin color. So we understand this dichotomy, this idea that only people that belong to a minority are the actual experts in portraying that minority's reality. And that is something that we have learned over time, precisely by looking at bodies of work of painters belonging to different minorities that have been better than anyone able to explain visually the realities of that minority. But as painters, although we acknowledge that there's that fact, we also understand that unless we step out of our box and we bring in subjects that have different flesh tones, we will never be able to create variations in our own portraits. And we learned that in a beautiful way when we did Kamala Harris' portrait, because we learned that that tone of the skin, her skin tone, we've never done before, and it has so many incredible qualities that we were completely unaware of. So we approached the idea of race, or the subject of race, from a painter's point of view, and how enriching it is to incorporate, to get inspired by, to bring in subjects that have a wider range of skin tone rather than just our own or one category. So that's the reason why during Black History Month there is never enough dialogue about the contributions of Black artists to culture and our society and our humanity. And we're also seeing that even though there is an effort to point and talk about Black artists, we realize that they're still way far behind in acknowledging the contributions, as I mentioned. So we feel like Bartley Hendricks, it's a monumental figure in art. And we wanted to bring, this is a self-portrait of him, and I don't know if you can just go like all the way down, but he is wearing a t-shirt, and he's naked, he's not wearing underwear. So let me just say that there's a reason why his paintings were not popular or didn't enter the mainstream. And it's not because he wasn't talented or he wasn't very good. it's because he painted black people. Plain and simple. Sorry to say that, but that was the reason why he never entered the Hall of Fame of art history in the second half of the 20th century. So this painting, he always, in some of the interviews, he passed away in 2017. He was married to a white person, if I can say that, because I'm just going to say that. It doesn't really matter, but his wife was an incredible supportive figure. There are interviews of her during some of his openings, and there was a portrait of her by him that it's so beautiful and touching. I couldn't find it online. It's on a video, but we'll share it on the webinar. But this portrait, my point is that he said over and over in his interviews that he painted what he liked. He wasn't involved into any kind of like political act. His intention was not to poke any sticks anywhere, and he was just painting his reality and the reality of the people around him. And that's all nice and fantastic, but we do feel like he was very political. I'm going to read the title of this painting. Icon for my man, Superman. Superman never saved any black people. Bobby Seale, 1969. Icon for my man, Superman. Superman never saved any black people. Bobby Seale. So if you tell me this is not political, I don't know. By the way, he was also controversial, and some people had an issue with him because using the same European tradition. Notice that in this painting, the background is done with silver leaf. He used gold leaf and silver leaf in the style of Byzantine, I think that's a word, or religious icons. So again, using that traditional religious component and bringing it to his own reality, which we think it's amazing and fascinating. Even with the usage of the canvas formats, he used square canvas when it wasn't that trendy, square canvases, and also canvases with round edges. Mixing the traditional with the contemporary. I'm going to bring another. Let me just bring what I thought is. I'm going to bring a Diego Rivera painting, a full figure Diego Rivera painting, and we have an issue with. How should I say that? We have an issue cataloging or creating a category or a label for his work because the usage of cool and the usage of proud and stuff like that, it kind of like has a little bit of a racial overtone because Diego Rivera painted royalty and noblemen, and they were also proud and wearing capes and coats and fancy shoes with high heels, and no one talks about this aspect in a very racial identity way. So this is an example of a full figure of Diego Rivera. I forgot the title of this, but I think it was a religious figure. Let me just find out. Portrait of Don Pedro de Barberana, Diego Rivera. We brought it because of the full figure. We brought it because of the evenness and the flatness of the background. There is no distinction between ground and walls, so it feels very minimalistic. And then I'm just gonna bring this portrait of Barkley Hendricks, and this portrait it's titled. I don't have the title. Tough Tony. Tough Tony. I think it was also in the early 70s. It's a full figure. It's cropped right here, but it's a full figure, and the background is also one flat area without distinction of wall and ground. So when we read like old catalogs explaining the work of Bartley Hendricks, there are words that come up, like for example, let me just see. Uh, Sorry, you guys. Yeah. Um, I think I just like edited the text, but yeah, brassy. I think there's a word that says brassy. Attitude. The word attitude comes up a lot. Even the word cool. So you could see that there's a bias trying to take away from his experience and his confluence of different influences, the music scene, influences of traditional portraiture from Europe, and his own reality. And I don't think he was thinking of those things. That's me. It's kind of like blabbering. When he was painting these portraits, he was just painting the portraits the best he did. He was painting his portraits using a very intentional sartorial choices to enhance or elevate or raise the bar of the portrait. He was interested on depicting the beauty and the style that surrounded him and inspired him and made him feel like he was living in a creative, rich creative environment. Yeah, anyhow, so just gonna bring another painting. I forgot, I don't think I have the title of this painting, but yeah, Buck, 1970. And again, what we'll do, I don't want to bring too many images of his work, but what we'll do is to just crop the face, because we're interested in skin tones and flesh tones and practice variations and using different combinations of colors in order to find if we have to tone down the yellow that happens when we make skin tones. And we talked about the yellow ochre or yellow pigment that kind of like gets in the pigment and then creates skin that feels too earthy. And we're going to talk about like third notes. This is a Anthony van Dyck painting, and another example of juxtaposing the pride and the sartorial choices of the subjects at the time, 1600s, early 1700s. This is a portrait of James Stewart holding an orange, the symbol of the royal family. Look at this billowy blouse and the mannerism of the hand, and the amazing long haircut with the super cute bangs. So you tell me that this is cool and brassy and has attitude. Perhaps yes, it is. But it's funny that we only apply those adjectives to a certain sort of like style of painting. Anyhow, I just wanted to mention also, yeah, going back to, this is he also painted like female figures. My image is covering, she's holding a can of Coke, and the can of Coke, it's cropped on the upper part of the canvas. He was very innovative in the sense of like arranging the figures in a certain way on the canvas. There was a lot of like intentional cropping and things that were bleeding off the edges of the canvas that also made him very, yeah, this is a close-up of the figure. So perhaps we'll bring just that, and then we'll concentrate face, hair, or any accessories, neckline, and the line of the shoulders. It'll be an exercise in portraiture using the traditional copyist method of learning how to paint by painting other people's pieces, just as a lot of people had to do when art school was not an option. So hopefully you guys will join us, and thank you guys for being here. We always appreciate that you make the effort to tune in live. Dina, thanks for I don't even know what's going on. Mercury retrograde still up. So, but thank you. Thanks, Amy Caps. Thanks, Jen. I'll see you tonight. We have a studio time tonight. DF Chalinor. Thank you so much. Kelvin Coffee Lab. Hania. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for waving at us. Lois, I hope you join us on Friday. This is going to be a good, we hope and we think it's going to be a good collection of paintings. Darlene, thank you so much. And we're looking forward to move from the clowns. Oh yeah, the two paintings from the clowns and the self-portrait to sort of like a different skin tone, and also more chances to talk about his work and how influential he was and how unknown he still is, and how his the interest for his work is exponentially increasing. And again, in 10 years you could have bought a painting for $40,000 10 years ago. Okay, so that was 2010, all right, 2011. 10 years ago seems like a long time, and $40,000, it's a lot. But with all this sort of like investing in stock market and stuff, imagine buying a painting by Barclay Leonard Hendricks for $40,000 in 2011 and selling it. This was part of a private collection, this painting right here. 10 years later for $4 million. So that's we're so thrilled and excited. And also we want to make sure that we study his work, that we learn his name, that we use his body of work as a source of inspiration for our own body of work, that we understand how revolutionary he was when everyone else was doing something different. We wish we could get our hands on this catalog book, American Skin, and I forgot the rest of the title, but American Skin, Artist on Black Figuration. And yeah, maybe one day the libraries will be open and we'll be able to get or find the book. But for now, yeah, join us, register. The link is in our calendar, ruthlesspainters.com. You can go to link in bio as well. It takes you to our website. You can pre-register, and then we're going to send an email with a little bit more of an explanation and some more examples tonight with a direct link to register. And hopefully you'll join us. And remember, also, if you're watching this before the weekend, on Saturday, we're going to Forest Lawn. And it's not going to be windy, and it's going to be absolutely gorgeous. So thank you so much, and we'll see you tomorrow.